Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday, day 2 of As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. One of my favorite books. I am reading this whole book. It's a short book, 26 pages. No, 25 pages, I think I said. Yeah, it's 25 pages. And I'm going to read the whole book this week. It's short and sweet and a classic, and you're welcome in advance, like I said yesterday. I'm going to read the whole thing and add my commentary, of course, which is always fun. So let's get right into this. Let me get my screen up here. And here we go. Okay. This is the second chapter. It's called Effect of Thought on Circumstances. A man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. Just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds and growing the flowers and fruits which he requires, so may a man tend to the garden of his mind, weeding out all of the wrong, useless, and impure thoughts and cultivating toward perfection the flowers and fruits of right, useful, and pure thoughts. So it says, just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds and growing. So just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeps it clean from weeds and grows flowers and fruits, which he requires and wants, so can we tend to the garden of our minds, weeding out all of the wrong, useless, and impure thoughts, and cultivating instead toward the perfection, the flowers and the fruits of right, useful, and pure thoughts. By pursuing this process, a man sooner or later discovers that he is the master gardener of his soul, the director of his life. He also reveals within himself the laws of thought and understands with ever-increasing accuracy how the thought forces and mind elements operate in the shaping of his character, circumstance, and destiny. So we also reveal within ourselves, by the way we cultivate our garden, the laws of thought and understand with ever-increasing accuracy, because it becomes more clear as time goes on how the thought forces and mind elements operate in the shaping of our character, circumstances, and destiny. Thought and character are one, and as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. We talked about this last week with Neville Goddard. Also, the lesson of living from the outside in, which most of us do. We let the outside world dictate our lives, how we're going to think, feel, act, dictate our circumstances. So it says thought and character, how we think and how we act, are one. And as character can only manifest, the way we act can only be produced through environment and circumstance. So the outer conditions of our life will always be found to match our inner state. This doesn't mean that our circumstances at any given time are an indication of our entire character, but that those circumstances, which are outside, are so intimately connected with some vital thought that we must have had within us for the time being, that we have to make that connection. What in our outside world, what in your outside world right now, it could be a negative circumstance, can you trace back to a thought you had? And like I've said before, I am not, buying into the school. And I think no one really buys or tries to say this. I think it's very misconstrued, the message of you attract everything into your life. So you could say, well, I didn't attract my mom dying or this. Yourself, your experiences of you, yourself, and you. Yes, we do. I do attract everything. I can either react or respond. It's not my business what other people attract into their lives. But if they are a part of mine, of course I'll be affected, but I will only experience their stuff through my lens. I'm responsible for how I respond, how I experience things, given my perspective, the glasses I have on at any given moment. So I am responsible for my experience of anything, whether it be I literally manifested it or attracted it or somebody else did. I'm responsible for my experience of that. I create my experience of that. Every man is where he is by the law of his being. The thoughts which he has built into his character have brought him there. And in the arrangement of his life, there is no element of chance, but all is the result of a law which cannot err. This is just as true of those who feel out of harmony with their surroundings as of those who are content with them. As a progressive and evolving being, man is where he is that he may learn, that he may grow. And as he learns the spiritual lesson which any circumstance contains for him, it passes away and gives place to another circumstance. So let's see. Okay, as a progressive and evolving being, we are where we are so that we may learn and grow. And as we learn the spiritual lesson, which any circumstance contains in it for us, it falls away eventually and gives place for another circumstance, for another lesson. How do you experience your lessons? I'm going through a lot of stuff right now, and I am really just through all my study and the things I've done and just age and experience. I truly am. Hi, Joseph. I truly am experiencing it in a different way because we've been programmed to make a big deal out of, when things go wrong. Does it always have to be dramatic? It doesn't. I think I've used the example of getting a flat tire. I got a flat tire for my niece's birthday last summer. It was easy peasy. It was what it was. I didn't take it personal. I didn't say the universe is out to get me. I just called AAA, watched a YouTube video or listened to an audiobook and just went along my merry way. Had patience. I couldn't change it. I accepted it. Move on. It was a non-issue. But in the past, I would have made a big deal about it. It says, man is buffeted by circumstances so long as he believes himself to be the creature of outside conditions. But when he realizes that he is a creative power and that he may command the hidden soil and seeds of his being out of which circumstances grow, he then becomes the rightful master of himself. That circumstances grow out of thought. Okay, that circumstances grow out of thought every man knows who has for any length of time practiced self-control and self-purification. For he will have noticed that the alteration in his circumstances has been in exact ratio with his altered mental condition. Have you experienced that? You change the way you look at something and all of a sudden you have a different experience of it? Good or bad? So true is this, that when a man earnestly applies himself to remedy the defects in his character and makes swift and marked progress, he passes rapidly through a succession of vicissitudes. Ain't that a word? Let's look it up. You know I like to look up words. I mean, is that like, that's a, you don't really hear that word being used a lot. Vicissitudes. Let's look it up together, shall we? I know how to pronounce it at least. Oh, here we go. Vicissitude, a change or variation occurring in the course of something. Interchange or alteration, just a change of the state of things. Okay. All right. So it says, so true is this, that when we alter our thoughts, we alter our experience. It's so true that when a man earnestly applies himself to fix the defects of his character and makes quick and marked progress, he passes rapidly through a succession of vicissitudes, of changes. The soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears. It reaches the height of its cherished aspirations. It falls to the level of its unchastened desires, and circumstances are the means by which the soul receives its own. So the soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears. So that's just like the stuff, like I said, the coaching I do, Bob Proctor. This is what this little stick figure is. When he talks about the mind, if you've seen this is our subconscious mind, or as the Greeks called it, our psyche, our heart, our emotions. If it's in our subconscious mind, we're emotionally attached to it. That's what's going to run the show. That's what's going to get the results in our life. We can think in our conscious mind all day long. We can know things, but we don't do them because we're not it's not in our subconscious. It's not planted deep in our heart of hearts. So like I talked about addictions, if you're addicted to cigarettes or chocolate or candy or alcohol, you know better, but you're emotionally addicted. You are so involved in it that is going to run the show, not what you know. That's the knowing doing gap. You may know better, but you don't do better. So it says the soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears. It reaches the height of its cherished aspirations. It falls to the level of its unchastened desires, and circumstances are means by which the soul receives its own. Every thought seed sown or allowed to fall into the mind and to take root there produces its own, blossoming sooner or later into act, and bearing its own fruitage of opportunity and circumstance. Good thoughts bear good fruit, bad thoughts, bad fruits. So every thought is a seed. And in this little diagram that I show every time, this bottom part is where the soil is. Stuff up here isn't planted. This is surface stuff. These are thoughts, ideas. But this is where the soil is. If a seed gets in here, it's going to come out here, whether you like it or not. If you allowed that seed to be planted and get cultivated by your emotions and your feelings, it's going to happen. And of course, if it's good, we want it to happen. But if it's fear or anxiety or worry, we don't want that to happen. So every thought seed sown or allowed to fall into the mind and to take root there produces its own, blossoming sooner or later into act, to our results, and bearing its own fruitage of opportunity and circumstance. Good thoughts bear good fruit, bad thoughts, bad fruit. The outer world of circumstance shapes itself to the inner world of thought. Ooh, this is good. Okay. The outer world of circumstance shapes itself to the inner world of thought. Just think of your thoughts are so powerful. Think of them as water. There's a lot of psychotherapeutic, like Jungian, Freudian, they equate the subconscious mind or the mind to water, the element of water. Think of how powerful water is. Think of what carved the Grand Canyon. Think of rivers and lakes. Just think of the Grand Canyon. I mean, hello. How many years did water carve that? Or how water can erode rocks. Water, tsunamis. I mean, water's powerful. We all know how powerful water is. So that powerful water force will carve away, especially if it's repeated over and over and over. So our thoughts are the water. And our outer, we're carving our outer. Just think of your thoughts as water, and you're carving your life with your thoughts. You're chiseling. So think of anything you approach, anything as a big block, like Michelangelo, or when that artist, carved the David. It was just a marble block. And he knew the David was in there. And he chiseled it, any sculptor looks at just a raw block, granite, and creates this amazing thing that was always inside. So look at your life, anything, as just a blank canvas, a rock, a canyon. And through your thoughts, you're going to carve it and it's going to mold and shape to whatever you want. And a lot of times we don't believe in our own power, and we let water that we don't even care, like everybody else carve it except us. We don't even take charge of it. So the outer world of circumstance shapes itself to the inner world of our thought. And both pleasant and unpleasant external circumstances are factors which make for the ultimate good of the individual. So the outer world of circumstance shapes itself to the inner world of thought. And both pleasant and unpleasant external conditions are factors which make for the ultimate good of the individual. So really that's saying that, good and bad, our mistakes are failures. And I'm not saying everything you got to do in life is perfect. All of the failures created who I am, trust me. A lot of us have, our failures and our mistakes, they're the greatest lessons that shaped us. We wouldn't change them for the world. I mean, in the moment, they were probably really painful. So again, the outer world of circumstance shapes itself to the inner world of thought, and both pleasant and unpleasant external conditions are factors which make for the ultimate good of the individual. So learning from our lessons. As the reaper of his own harvest, man learns both by suffering and bliss, just like what I said, James Allen. So as the reaper of our own harvest, we learn both by suffering and bliss. Following the inmost desires, aspirations, thoughts by which we allow ourselves to be dominated, pursuing the will-o-wisps of impure imaginings or steadfastly. Okay, this was written a long time ago. Okay, so what is he saying? Okay, so following the inmost desires, aspirations, thoughts by which we allow ourselves to be dominated, pursuing our will-o'-the-wisps of impure imaginings, or steadfastly walking the highway of strong and high endeavor. So pretty much taking the low road or taking the high road, letting our mind go into the gutter or letting our mind go into high thoughts. So following the inmost desires, aspirations, thoughts by which we allow ourselves to be dominated, whether they be gutter thoughts or those high consciousness, high vibe thoughts, we arrive at their fruition and fulfillment in the outer conditions of our life. So whatever we think, whether they be down in the dirty, our mind is in the gutter and we're jealous and talking crap and judging, or we're loving, we're accepting, we're forgiving, whatever that is, we arrive at those thoughts' fruition, good or bad, and their fulfillment in the outer world will show up in our lives. The law of growth and adjustment is everywhere. A man does not come to the almshouse or the jail by the tyranny of fate or circumstance. So a man doesn't end up in church or in jail by just fate or circumstance, but by the pathway of groveling thoughts and base desires. Okay. Oh, no. I totally read that wrong. Okay. So a man does not come to the almshouse. So what would that be, like the charity house? So a man doesn't come to be homeless or go to jail by fate or circumstance, but by the pathway of groveling low thoughts and base desires, giving into base desires, addictions, stealing, robbery, theft. So a man does not come to be homeless, the almshouse, or to jail by the tyranny of fate or circumstance, but by the pathway of groveling thoughts and base desires. Nor does a pure-minded man fall suddenly into crime by stress of any mere external force. The criminal thought has long been secretly fostered. Ooh, this is good. Okay, so it says, so a good, pure-minded man, just all of a sudden, when you hear like they're in jail and arrested, you're like, how did that happen? It doesn't just happen. It means that there was that in their heart, in their subconscious mind, they were involved for a long time with this criminal thought because it's the result. It had to have been a thought first to get fruition. So it says, a pure-minded man doesn't suddenly fall into crime by the stress of mere external force. The criminal thought has long been secretly fostered in the heart, and the hour of opportunity revealed its gathered power. And this just brings to the fact that any result you see in people's life, and it's hard to see the results in even my own life, that I can trace them back to any mistakes that I've made, just stuff that I wish would go another way. And they're lessons, right? I'm not perfect. No one is. But it leads back to my thought. So if I say, I didn't mean to do it, like clearly it was a brewing in here somehow, or it was a fear or something I really wanted. Circumstance does not make the man. It reveals him to himself. Circumstance does not make the man. It reveals him to himself. No such conditions can exist as descending into vice and its attended sufferings, apart from vicious inclinations, or ascending into virtue and its pure happiness without the continued cultivation of virtuous aspirations. That was a mouthful. Circumstance does not make the man. It reveals to him himself. No such conditions can exist as descending into vice, and its attended sufferings, apart from vicious inclinations, or ascending into virtue and its pure happiness without the continued cultivation of virtuous aspirations. So we can't descend into suffering or soar to the heights without continued cultivation of either, bad or good things. Therefore, as the Lord and Master of thought, we are the Lord and Master of our thought, is the maker of himself, the shaper and author of environment. We shape and we author our environment. But at birth, the soul comes to its own, and through every step of its earthly pilgrimage, it attracts those combinations of conditions which reveal itself, which are the reflections of its own purity and impurity, its strength and weakness. So again, even at birth, the soul comes to its own, and through every step of its earthly pilgrimage, it attracts those combinations of conditions which reveal itself, which are the reflections of its own purity and impurity, its strengths and weaknesses. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. Their whims, fancies, and ambitions are thwarted at every step, but their inmost thoughts and desires are fed with their own food, be it foul or clean. The divinity that shapes our ends is in ourselves. It is our very self, the I am that we talked about with Neville Goddard. Only himself monocles man. Thought and action. And I remember monocle, isn't that like handcuff, cuffs, chains, man? Only himself monocles man. Thought and action are the jailers. Ooh. We only cage ourselves in. Thought and action are the jailers of fate. They imprison because, being base, they are also the angels. Ooh, okay. So only man himself jails himself through actions and thought. They imprison being base, and thoughts are also the angels of freedom. They liberate being noble. Not what he wishes and prays for does a man get. but what he justly earns. His wishes and prayers are only gratified and answered when they harmonize with his thoughts and actions. Not what we wish and pray for do we get, but that which we justly earn. Our wishes and prayers are only gratified and answered when they harmonize with our thoughts and actions. That's congruency, that's alignment with our thoughts, our feelings. When I'm pointing, I'm picturing that circle head of the conscious part of your brain, the subconscious, and then your body, your actions. So only until our it says only gratified when they harmonize with our thoughts and actions. In the light of this truth, what then is the meaning of fighting against circumstances? It means that a man is continually revolting against an effect without, while all the time he is nourishing and preserving its cause in his heart. So, in the light of this truth, what then is the meaning of fighting against circumstances? It means that a man is continually revolting against an effect without, while all the time he is nourishing and preserving its cause in the heart. Ooh. So when we fight against our circumstances, what we're doing is we're revolting. We're fighting against the effect. We're fighting what's projected onto the screen. We're fighting what's the effect. While all the while, we're continuing to feed and nourish the cause that's in our heart, our psyche. So until we stop nourishing the thought in our psyche, until we stop getting emotionally involved, playing it over and over, we're going to keep getting the result. So basically, we continuously revolt against the effect, the result. We fight this. We're like, oh, I don't like this, blah, blah, blah. But we're continuously feeding it, keeps getting the same thing. Boop, boop, boop. We'll keep getting the same thing. But we hate this and we want to fight it. But we can't come out here and start fighting this. It's not going to fix it. We got to go to where it's coming from. Stop cultivating it in our heart. So when we fight against circumstance, resist what is, that means that we're continuously revolting to the outside effect, the result, while ignorantly we continuously feed the beast that's producing it. That cause may take the form of a conscious vice or an unconscious weakness, but whatever it is, it stubbornly retards the efforts of its possessor and thus calls aloud for remedy. Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. I know something about that. Men are anxious. We are all anxious to improve our circumstances, but we're unwilling to improve ourselves. We are therefore remaining bound. So men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. The man who does not shrink from self-crucifixion can never fail to accomplish the object upon which his heart is set. The man who does not shrink from self-crucifixion can never fail to accomplish the object upon which his heart is set. That is a riddle. The man who does not shrink from self-crucifixion can never fail to accomplish the object upon which his heart is set. This is as true of earthly as of heavenly things. Even the man whose sole object is to acquire wealth must be prepared to make great personal sacrifices before he can accomplish his object. And how much more so he would realize a strong and well-poised life. Oh, so the man who does not shrink from self-crucifixion, so somebody who is not afraid to sacrifice, can never fail to accomplish what we have set in our heart. So whatever dream is in your heart, if you're willing to sacrifice and give up, and oh God, sacrifice is just, it doesn't mean you have to give up everything you love. It just means making room, taking something that of a lesser value, sacrificing something of a lesser value to make room for something of a higher value. So you really never lose, because the lesser value is something you don't want. So you're sacrificing. I always see this picture of a truck with a bunch of dirt in it. You have to dump out the truck so that a new load of like gold can be put in there. What are you going to do with dirt? Nothing. So the man who does not shrink, who's not afraid of suffering for the time being in the pursuit of his goal, is always sure to get what his heart is set on. This is as true of earthly as it is of heavenly things. Even the man whose only object is to acquire money must be prepared to make great personal sacrifices before he can accomplish his object. I don't know about that, James Allen. And how much more so he would realize a strong and well-poised life. But then again, I get it. Yeah. Here is a man who is wretchedly poor. So this is a story. Here is a man who is wretchedly poor. He is extremely anxious that his surroundings and home comforts should be improved. Yet all the time he shrinks his work and considers he is justified in trying to deceive his employer on the ground of the insufficiency of his wages. Ooh, this is good. Okay. So there was this man who was super poor, and he was all anxious and scared that his surroundings and home comforts, he wanted to improve his circumstances. Yet he did not work very hard. And he thought that that was cool. He thought it was cool to deceive his employer because his employer wasn't paying him enough money. So basically it's saying, say you get a job and your boss, you're like, he ain't paying me enough. I ain't gonna do my job good. So you do a really crappy job and you justify it because you say, well, the pay's crap. Such a man does not understand the simplest rudiments of those principles, the laws, the universal laws, which are the basis of true prosperity. And it is not only totally unfitted to rise out of his wretchedness, but is actually attracting to himself a still deeper wretchedness by dwelling in and acting out indolent, deceptive, and unmanly thoughts. So it's the spirit that so whatever job, however you do one thing is how you do everything. No matter how much you get paid, if you have that job, you do it impeccably. That'll always pay off. Like karma, call it karma. But you probably worked with people who someone does a really crappy job, and then the people who really like go the extra mile. The people that go the extra mile, they always end up succeeding. They get opportunities, their personalities, they win. They win. So here is a man who is wretchedly poor. He is extremely anxious that his surroundings and home comforts should be improved. Yet all the time he shrinks his work and considers he is justified in trying to deceive his employer on the ground of the insufficiency of his wages. Such a man does not understand the simplest rudiments of those principles, which are the basis of true prosperity, and is not only totally unfitted to rise out of his wretchedness, but is actually attracting to himself a still deeper wretchedness by dwelling in and acting out indolent, deceptive, and unmanly thoughts. All right, 2 more pages, 3 more. Here is a rich man who is the victim of a painful and persistent disease as the result of gluttony. He is willing to give large sums of money to get rid of it, but he will not sacrifice his gluttonous desires. He wants to gratify his taste for rich and unnatural viands and have his health as well. So this guy has a painful and persistent disease because he overindulges, but he's not willing. He's willing to pay a lot of money, but he's not willing to cut down on the riches of the food and the activity. Such a man is totally unfit to have health because he has not yet learned the first principles of a healthy life. So here is a rich man who is the victim of a painful and persistent disease as the result of gluttony. He is willing to give large sums of money to get rid of it, but he is not willing to sacrifice his gluttonous desires. He wants to gratify his taste for rich and unnatural things and have his health as well. Such a man is totally unfit to have health because he has not yet learned the first principles of a healthy life. Here is an employer of labor who adopts crooked measures to avoid paying the regulation wage, and in the hope of making larger profits reduces the wages of his work people. Such a man is altogether unfit for prosperity, and when he finds himself bankrupt, both as regards reputation and riches, he blames circumstances. It's everyone else's fault, not knowing that he is the sole author of his condition. Never blame your circumstances. Always try to look back at the source, how you contributed to it. It's hard. Oh, that's the hardest work to do, to take responsibility or see your part in it. I have introduced these 3 cases merely as illustrative of the truth that man is the causer, though nearly always it's unconscious, of his circumstances, and that whilst aiming at a good end, he is continually frustrating its accomplishment by encouraging thoughts and desires which cannot possibly harmonize with that end. Such cases could be multiplied and varied almost indefinitely, but this is not necessary, as the reader can, if he so resolves, trace the action of the laws of thought in his own mind and life. And until this is done, mere external facts cannot serve as a ground of reasoning. When I talked about this the other day, about our thoughts, our mind is the power, is the big fat light of the projector. Say you're in a movie theater, you're by yourself. You know, when you look back, you see the big light that's projecting the film. So our thoughts are the big light. And the story we tell ourselves, the thoughts are the film. That is, the light is shining through. And it's projecting whatever thoughts, whatever ideas, whatever story onto the screen. So say you're in the movie theater of your own mind and you're looking at your life. That's a projection of what's going on in here. So if you're sitting in the chair or you're in your life and you're looking like, time out, let me look around. What is going on in my life? And you see the scenes of your life and you're like, I don't like that. So what do? We go and we try to strangle people or switch things up, or like, no, you go over here, and we try to control things. What if we were in a movie theater and we did not like the movie on the screen? Would you run up to the screen and try to beat the people up? No. You would go up to the booth and rip that film out. Change your thoughts, not the outer circumstance. The outer circumstance is just the effect of the cause. It starts here. So although that's the reality you're looking at, changing that is not going to work. You got to change this first. Okay. So where was I? Okay. So he tells the stories. Okay. Circumstance, however, are so complicated. Wait, let me read. Okay. Such cases could be multiplied and varied. Okay. So that's basically what, if we resolve to, if we finally get the hint that we have to trace the actions, the stuff that goes on outside to the external factors, if we trace that back into where it starts, then that's only when the change will come. Circumstances, however, are so complicated. Thought is so deeply rooted, and the conditions of happiness vary so vastly with individuals that a man's entire soul condition, although it may be known to himself, cannot be judged by another from the external aspects of his life alone. So circumstances, however, are so complicated. thought is so deeply rooted and the conditions of happiness vary so vastly with individuals that a man's entire soul condition, although it may be known to himself, cannot be judged by another from the external aspect of his life alone. Okay, so basically you can't judge a book by its cover. So a man's entire soul condition, although he might know it, cannot be judged by someone else just based on their outside. So yeah, never. I was just talking to a friend about this, about Malcolm Gladwell's book, Talking to Strangers, how we're such bad judges of character. We think we're really good at judging people, or no, we're not. Okay. A man may be honest in certain directions, yet suffer privations. A man may be dishonest in certain directions, yet acquire wealth. So, right? Just because you see someone rich and wealthy doesn't mean they're a good person. And just because you see an honest person doesn't mean he's not devious. Just on the outside, they look honest. Doesn't mean that they're not like stealing. You just can't judge a book by the cover. But the conclusion usually formed that the one man fails because of his particular honesty and that the other prospers because of his particular dishonesty is the result of a superficial judgment. Yeah, that's what I just said. Okay. So we can't just come to the conclusion that because of one man's honesty and that so by the conclusion usually formed that someone fails, someone loses because he's so honest, but that another man prospers, even though he's dishonest, is the result of a superficial judgment, just judging the book by the cover, which assumes that the dishonest man is almost totally corrupt and the honest man almost entirely virtuous, right? If we see one characteristic in a person, we think we know them. And then when something happens, we're like, oh, I never saw it coming. Like, we put people on pedestals and we think that we know them. And then we're so offended. We're so offended and shocked and feel so betrayed. It's like, get it together, people. Don't put people on pedestals. People are human. Just because they're one way doesn't mean they're perfect. No one's perfect. That's why a lot of people say don't meet your heroes because they'll let you down. Of course they will. Of course they will. Pollyanna, you still believe in Santa Claus? Like, get it together. Nobody's perfect. I learned that the hard way. That's why I'm so passionate about it. So it says, the dishonest man may have admirable virtues which the other does not possess, and the honest man obnoxious vices which are absent in the other. The honest man reaps the good results of his honest thoughts and acts. He also brings upon himself the sufferings which his vice produce. The dishonest man likewise garners his own suffering and happiness. It is pleasing to human vanity to believe that one suffers because of one's virtue, but not until a man has extirpated every sickly, bitter, and impure thought of his mind. Okay. It is pleasing to human vanity to believe that one suffers because of one's virtue, but not until man has totally got rid of every sickly, bitter, and impure thought from his mind and washes every sinful stain from his soul, can he be in a position to know and declare that his sufferings are the result of his good and not of his bad qualities. I remember reading this and I was like, what? It is pleasing to human vanity to believe that one suffers because of one's virtue, but not until a man has extirpated every sickly, bitter, and impure thought from his mind and washed every sinful stain from his soul, can he be in a position to know and declare that his sufferings are the result of his good and not of his bad qualities. And on the way to, yet long before he has reached the supreme perfection, he will have found working in his mind and life the great law, which is absolutely just and which cannot therefore give good for evil, evil for good. Okay, so it's saying that we want to believe that we suffer because we're so good. But we're not so good. That's not why we suffer. Because we're so holy and pure and so virtuous that we suffer. Like, oh, good guys always finish last. The nice person gets eaten alive. No. We suffer because we have sickly and bad thoughts about ourselves or our circumstance, or we complain or we whine. We have lowly thoughts. Oh, yeah. It says, so good, you cannot give good for evil or evil for good. Get good for evil or evil for good. Possessed of such knowledge, he will then know, looking back upon his past ignorance and blindness, that his life is and always was justly ordered, and that all his past experiences, good and bad, were the equitable outworking of his evolving yet unevolved self. So once we know this, we will know, looking back upon our past ignorance and blindness, that our life is and always was perfectly and justly ordered, and that all of our experiences, good and bad, were the equitable outworking of our evolving yet unevolved self. Good thoughts and actions can never produce bad results. Good thoughts and actions can never produce bad results. Bad thoughts and actions can never produce good results. Results don't lie. This is but saying that nothing can come from corn but corn. Nothing from nettles but nettles. That's like, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So we try to question, we don't trust our intuition, especially when it comes to people judging of character. Listen to your intuition. If you see someone like a nice person all polished in a suit, but you're around them, you're like, something ain't right. I don't feel whatever, truly. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it might not look like a duck, but it's a duck. It's like if you feel that intuition, you're usually right. That's kind of a side note, but good thoughts and actions can never produce bad results. Bad thoughts and actions can never produce good results. This is but saying that nothing can come from corn but corn, nothing from nettles but nettles. Men understand this law in the natural world and work with it, but few understand it in the mental and moral world, though its operation there is just as simple and undeviating, and they therefore do not cooperate with it. We don't cooperate with. If you have good thoughts and good actions, you get good things. If you go to the gym and you work out, you get fit. If you study every day and do self-work, you improve. No, we think there's an easy way, people. We think there's an overnight microwave easy pill success. We don't believe that one for one. You plant corn, you get corn. You do work, you get results. We want the results, but we don't want to do the work. It works just like nature. Men understand this law of the natural world, that if you plant corn, you get corn. And we work with it. But few of us understand in the mental and moral world, though its operations are exactly the same. We don't understand it. We don't cooperate with it. Suffering is always the effect, the result, of wrong thought in some direction. Suffering is always the result of wrong thought in some direction. It is an indication that the individual is out of harmony with himself, with the law of his being. The sole and supreme use of suffering is to purify, to burn out all that is useless and impure. Ooh, that's good. So the sole and supreme use of suffering, it's that fire, that discomfort. It's to purify, to burn out all it's useless and impure. That's useless and impure. Just like the wildfires, like the natural ones, have to naturally burn all the brush out. The old wood that has died and fallen away, it has to burn up. And I'm sure you've seen, like, they actually set fires on purpose to get rid of all of the brush. Ooh, suffering is always the effect of wrong thoughts in some direction. It is an indication that the individual is out of harmony with himself. We're not congruent. Our thoughts don't match our feelings, and our actions are whack. Ooh, the sole and supreme use of suffering is to purify, to burn out all that is useless and impure. Suffering ceases. Suffering stops, people, for those who are pure. Suffering ceases for those who are pure. There could be no object in burning gold after the dross has been removed, and a perfectly pure and enlightened being could not suffer. The circumstances which a man encounters with suffering are the result of his own mental inharmony. The circumstances which a man encounters with suffering are the result of his own mental inharmony. The circumstances which a man encounters with blessedness are the result of his own mental harmony. Blessedness, not material possessions, is the measure of right thought. Wretchedness, not lack of material possessions, is the measure of wrong thought. Oof. The circumstances which a man encounters with suffering are the result of his own mental inharmony. The circumstances which a man encounters with blessedness are the result of his own mental harmony. Blessedness, not material possessions, are the result of his own mental harmony. Blessedness, not material possessions, is the measure of right thought. So how we are blessed is not because of our material things or the things we have, but it's the measure of our right thought. Wretchedness, not the lack of material things, is the measure of wrong thought. A man may be cursed and rich. He may be blessed and poor. Blessedness and riches are only joined together when the riches are rightly and wisely used. And the poor man only descends into wretchedness when he regards his lot as a burden unjustly imposed. Indignance and indulgence are the two extremes of wretchedness. They are both equally unnatural and the result of mental disorder. A man is not rightly conditioned until he is a happy, healthy, and prosperous being. And happiness, health, and prosperity are the result of a harmonious adjustment of the inner with the outer, of the man and with his surroundings. Ooh, okay. A man is not rightly conditioned until he is happy, healthy, and a prosperous being. We're meant to be healthy, happy, and prosperous. And happiness, health, and prosperity are the result of harmonious adjustment. Think of a chiropractic adjustment when they put everything in alignment. Got to be in alignment. You can't be scattered. You can't be thinking one way, feeling another. You tell everybody that you don't believe in one thing, but secretly you do it when the lights go out. You're not congruent. You have no integrity. You got to be in alignment. Your thoughts have to match what's in your heart, have to match what is the result. And everybody can see your results. So it's not hard to see what's going on up in here. That's embarrassing. Results don't lie. It's like, if you have kids or you lied to your parents, Mom, I swear I'm not drinking. But if it smells like a beer, walks like a beer, talks like a beer, she drunk. Right? That's good. A man is not rightly conditioned until he is happy, healthy, and prosperous. Happiness, health, and prosperity are the result of harmonious adjustment of the inner with the outer, of the man with his surroundings. We got to be aligned and adjust. A man only begins to be a man when he ceases to whine and revile and commences to search for the hidden justice which regulates his life. And as he adapts his mind to that regulating factor, he ceases to accuse others as the cause of his condition and builds himself up in strong and noble thoughts, ceases to kick against circumstances, but begins to use them as aids to his more rapid progress and as a means of discovering the hidden powers and possibilities within himself. Law, not confusion, is the dominating principle in the universe. That's the truth. So law and order, not confusion and chaos. Law and order are the dominating principles of the universe. Justice, not injustice, is the soul and substance of life. And righteousness, not corruption, is the molding and moving force in the spiritual government of the world. This being so, man has but to right himself to find that the universe is right. And during the process of putting himself right, he will find that as he alters his thoughts toward things and other people will alter theirs towards him. Whew. So law, not confusion, is the dominating principle in the universe. Justice, not injustice, is the soul and substance of life. And righteousness, not corruption, is the molding and moving force in the spiritual government of the world. This being so, man has but to right himself to find that the universe is right. And during the process of putting himself right, he will find that as he alters his thoughts toward things and other people will alter towards him. The proof of this truth is in every person, and it therefore admits of easy investigation by systematic introspection, know thyself, and self-analysis. Let a man radically alter his thoughts, and he will be astonished at the rapid transformation it will effect in the material conditions of his life. So let a man radically alter his thoughts. Let a man go up to the film booth and rip out that film and watch how shocked he is that a different movie gets on the screen. Let a man radically alter his thoughts, and he will be astonished at the rapid transformation. Let a man go to the gym every day for a month and radically watch his body change. That's how ridiculous we make this. I mean, this is how easy it is. So we radically alter our thoughts and just watch how fast the transformation will come into our lives in the material. Men imagine that thought can be kept secret, but it cannot. It rapidly crystallizes into habit, and habit solidifies into circumstance. If you hold something in your heart and you think about it over and over, it will manifest in some way or another. You can't hide it. It says it rapidly. Men imagine that they can keep thought secret, but it can't be kept secret. It rapidly crystallizes into habit, and habit solidifies into circumstance. Bestial thoughts crystallize into habits of drunkenness and sensuality, which solidify into circumstances of destitution and disease. Impure thoughts of every kind crystallize into enervating and confusing habits, which solidify into distracting and adverse circumstances. Thoughts of fear, doubt, and indecision crystallize into weak, unmanly, and irresolute habits, which solidify into circumstances of failure, indignance, and slavish dependence. Lazy thoughts crystallize into habits of uncleanliness and dishonesty, which solidify into circumstances of foulness and beggary. Hateful and condemnatory thoughts crystallize into habits of accusation and violence, which solidify into circumstances of injury and persecution. Selfish thoughts of all kinds crystallize into habits of self seeking, which solidify into circumstances more or less distressing. On the other hand, beautiful thoughts of all kinds crystallize into habits of grace and kindliness, which solidify into genial and sunny circumstances. Pure thoughts crystallize into habits of temperance and self control, which solidify into circumstances of repose and peace. Thoughts of courage, self reliance, and decision crystallize into manly habits, which solidify into circumstances of success, plenty, and freedom. Energetic thoughts crystallize into habits of cleanliness and industry, which solidify into circumstances of pleasantness. Gentle and forgiving thoughts crystallize into habits of gentleness, which solidify into protective and preservative circumstances. Loving and unselfish thoughts crystallize into habits of self-forgetfulness for others, which solidify into circumstances of sure and abiding prosperity and true riches. A particular train of thought persisted in. So a particular train of thought, when we get on a train and we stay on that train of thought, if we keep riding that thought, be it good or bad, cannot fail to produce its results on the character of circumstances. If you hop on that train of a certain thought, you're going to arrive at the station and everyone's going to see it. A man cannot directly choose his circumstances, but he can choose his thoughts. That's what I said. Man cannot directly choose his circumstances, but he can choose his thoughts, and so indirectly, yet surely, shapes his circumstances. So no matter where you start, no matter where you are now, this is where you're going to go, change it and shape it. Where are you putting your thoughts? Pardon me. Where are you putting your thoughts? How are you going to shape your circumstance? Are you going to focus and let the outside affect you, or are you going to, through your thoughts, affect the outside? P.S. That's what my class is on Thursday. Hope you join. 5 p.m. Zoom link will be in here. Nature helps every man to the gratification of the thoughts which he most encourages, and opportunities are presented which will most speedily bring to the surface both the good and the evil thoughts. I can't tell you how much I love this chapter. It's long AF. I've probably been over an hour. I don't even care. This is so good. I needed to hear this. Nature, the world, universe, God helps every person cultivate the thoughts which we most encourage, and opportunities are presented which will most speedily bring to the surface both the good and the bad thoughts. So it's like when you have a thought, everything conspires to make it happen, whether it be good or bad. So when we say, oh, it's a cruel world, well, you're focused on cruel things. Life is bad. You're focused on bad things. Life is good. You're focused on good things. Let a man cease from his sinful thoughts, and all the world will soften towards him and be ready to help him. Let him put away his weakly and sickly thoughts, and lo, opportunities will spring up on every hand to aid his strong resolves. Let him encourage good thoughts, and no hard fate shall bind him down to wretchedness and shame. The world is your kaleidoscope, and the varying combinations of colors, which at every succeeding moment it presents to you, are the exquisitely adjusted pictures of your ever-moving thoughts. That's kind of the whole film theory. Kaleidoscope, especially when you hold it up to a light, that's what's going on the screen. All those colors. Your thoughts are colors. The world is your kaleidoscope, and the varying combinations of colors, which at every succeeding moment, always changing, present to us the exquisitely adjusted pictures of our ever-moving thoughts. This is it. We're done. I'm ending with this poem at the last, and we have read that whole chapter, which is the longest chapter. So this is the poem at the end. So you will be what you will to be. Okay, let me start that again. So you will be what you will to be. Let failure find its false content in that poor word environment, but spirit scorns it and is free. It masters time, it conquers space, it cows the boastful trickster, chance, and bids the tyrant circumstance uncrown and fill a servant's place. The human will, that force unseen, the offspring of a deathless soul, can hew a way to any goal, though walls of granite intervene, but not impatient in delays, but wait as one who understands. When spirit rises and commands, the gods are ready to obey. I gotta go to bed. That was, my friends, James Allen As a Man Thinketh, Effect of Thought on Circumstances. I believe that's the longest chapter. But I will break this up. We will be done with it by the end of the week. I hope you enjoyed that. This is one of my favorite books ever. It has really shaped me. It was really good to read this whole chapter tonight aloud. I hope you enjoyed it. Thursday, me, you, Zoom. I'll put the link below if you don't already have it. 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to talk more about, so my theme, my kind of message this week is living from the inside out versus the outside in. All the books that I read, all the great thinkers, every great mystic, enlightened master knew that we have to know ourselves. That's all we need. That's the scariest work. No one can do it for us. It's a party of one. And it's so different. It's so unique, just like our fingerprints. I was just telling a friend this. I'm like, I'm learning all of this stuff, but God, I would never be able to teach this to somebody else. I couldn't teach the way I did it because my life isn't like anybody else's. It's so particular. And it's like we want someone else to like carry the load for us, but nobody can do it. We got to do it ourselves. But the reward is so great. That's why we look at these people who succeed and we're like, oh, they did it. And we try to do it and we're like, that's hard. Or wow, they must be special. No, they just endured, persisted. Love you all. Thank you for your love and support. If you know anybody who enjoys this kind of material, please invite them to the Citadel. I hope to meet them. Have a wonderful evening.